shock stat alert. 8 out of 10 consumers prefer businesses with a strong personal brand. Stick with me and I'll share the tactics to improve your personal brand. Later in the video, I'll also share with you what Jeff Bezos says about personal branding. Really interesting. So what are we talking about when we talk about personal brands? Well, personal brand is everything that you reflect as an individual. Most of us in business, we project a particular persona. We walk into a room with a load of people with suits on and we instantly feel out of place if we're not wearing a suit, and vice versa. So it's all about trying to find the right kind of style and persona to reflect who you really are. Now we're going to teach you a few tricks to help you achieve that. Back to the stats. So 8 out of 10 consumers would prefer to engage with a company that has a strong personal brand. So let's face it, if a business ignores the personal brand, or an individual ignores their personal brand, then they become a faceless person amongst a crowd of people. So it's important that you look at how you are perceived and how you want to be perceived and work out a strategy to reflect who you really are. Now, as a marketeer, I've gone through various personalities and personas over the years. I've been in business for a long time now. The business has been going for 30 years, which is surprising when I say it out loud. And over those years, I've evolved as an individual. A lot of this comes down to my own personal insecurities. When I would arrive in a room where I was the youngest by far, I would often plan to arrive and wear a business suit so I fitted in with the people within that environment. Now, as I've got older and the audiences and the people in the networking groups that I go to are becoming younger, then I've changed my the way I dress to reflect a younger persona, which I think it's not to say that I'm trying to be somebody that I'm not, because I think this persona probably reflects more of who I am as an individual. And I think nowadays, since COVID, since people have spent time at home, locked in their houses, not necessarily getting up and putting suits on to go to work, I think style has changed to allow you to be more natural in what you wear and reflect who you are as an individual. Now, I think this is really important as a personal brand experiment, really, to try and find out who you are as an individual and try and reflect that in the clothes and the branding that you put out. Now, I suppose it's important at this point to kind of dig down into what actually your personal brand is. Now, my understanding of what a personal brand is, it's not just the clothes that you wear, it's what you say, it's the narrative that you put out about yourself, it's what you post on social media, it's what you post on LinkedIn, it's how you portray yourself and how you manage yourself in a business environment, how you are in meetings, how you are in networking meetings, how you are in general with business people. Now, it's important that you reflect yourself in all of those elements and remain authentic, because we know people respond in a much more positive way if you're authentic and you're not trying to be someone you used to be, or you're not trying to be someone that you're not. So there are some key things that you need to do as an individual to have a strong personal brand. And as I mentioned, authenticity is one of the key aspects. The second aspect is to sort of try and generate a narrative around yourself that portrays who you are as an individual. Third element is consistency. Now, I think I've been guilty myself of not being consistent over the years and trying to please the audience too much and not necessarily reflecting who I am as an individual. And I think as I've grown older and more wiser, I think I've tried to sort of drop all of those elements, that was evolving, was coming out in my personality to try and please everybody else. As I get older, I try to worry less about trying to be what the person I'm talking to wants me to be and trying to reflect myself more as an individual. And that is also reflected in storytelling, how you tell your story, how you explain who you are as an individual, how you explain where you are in your career and what it is you actually get excited about. Now, these are really important stories to tell and share because it underlines consistency, it underlines authenticity, and it kind of gives you a method of communicating to individuals. And I suppose there's many ways why we've kind of gone down this route of developing these kinds of marketing materials or content that goes out, because we want to share our story. We want to talk about us as a business. I want to talk about myself as a business person, as a creative person, and try and share a bit about why we exist as a business and where we're going and what we want to achieve. And I think this is a good medium for that. So let's get tactical. I have here a list of things that are important that you need to do to improve your personal brand. So point one, identify your expertise. So what makes you a thought leader? What's unique about you as an individual and your perspective? And then try and find ways of communicating that with individuals or groups. Point two, craft a compelling narrative. Again, comes down to the storytelling. Tell your story, highlight your journey, find ways of communicating where you're heading and what makes you tick, because people will respond to that. Point three, become a content powerhouse. Grand as it may sound. Find methods and ways to share what you're thinking. Communicate what it is that makes you excited and makes you tick. Because content is king. The more information you can share with people, the better. And in many ways, by sharing and giving that information, it makes you a more open person and more likely for people to engage with you. And coming from engage, point number 4, engage and network. So it's all right having a personal brand. It's all right, reflecting who you are from a personal point of view, but unless you're engaging with people and networking with people, it's pointless. You've got to find a way of communicating with people. You've got to get in a room with people or in a Zoom with people or wherever to allow you to share that information. And the important one, which I've mentioned a couple of times now, is authenticity. You've got to do all of the above in a way that is authentic to you as an individual. There's no point in dressing up and putting a business suit on nowadays if you don't like wearing business suits or you don't need to. Try and find who you are in the heart and try and reflect that. So how do businesses leverage personal brand? Well, I suppose this comes down to the individuals in the business. Our collective personal brand is different. Each individual in the business is different, but we do have, because of the way that we recruit people, because we recruit people who fit in our family, there is quite an interesting personal brand that kind of spins out from that. So how does it manifest? Well, I think the way that we dress nowadays at Nexus, it's very much reflects the individuals in the business. Now, the reason I'm wearing a hat today is because it's Friday, and I suddenly thought, you know what, it's warm outside. It feels like a kind of cap kind of day. It feels like this is what I wanted to wear. Previous times I've turned up and I've got a jacket on and I feel like a little bit more formal. Still relaxed, but a little bit more formal. And I think today I thought, do you know what, this is just about, if we're going to do it about personal branding, let's just relax and not worry too much about it and see what comes out from it. So the hat went on. It kind of reflects what kind of mood I'm in today. It kind of reflects the weather outside, and it kind of just says this is who I am, really. Find me at the weekends wearing a cap and a t-shirt. I don't try too hard over the weekends. So today seemed like one of those days. And I think it's important that people do more of that. And I think it's now a little bit more accepted in businesses that people reflect who they are as an individual. I do sometimes have strange scenarios where, because we enter a room and are perceived as marketing and creative people, there is an expectation for us to be wacky, wild, dye our hair, have arms full of tattoos, just to try and reflect the kind of stereotype that fits into that kind of mold. And it's not always the case. You can be creative without necessarily being that far wacky. I'm not saying that's not wrong. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily, we don't all fit into boxes, do we? There is a bit of a contradiction around personal branding, and I've kind of struggled on this front a little bit with myself. So we just decided to put my face on the top of all the banners for the Clever Content channel. So this was sort of partly because I was the face of it, and you don't see the people behind the camera and doing all the other stuff. So does that mean that is my personal brand? Am I doing that to build a personal brand? Interesting question. But I think it is. I think I'm trying to build that brand around what people perceive me to be, and I'm relaxed, I'm smiling, I'm saying all the right things, the right body language in that banner, as you all kind of dash off and have a look at it. But am I trying to project where I want to be, or am I being authentic with who I am? And I think we managed to balance it between those two things, really. I want people to see me as happy and friendly and smiley and successful, because we've kind of got to the point where the quality that we're putting out is good and it reflects professionalism and all of those things that we want people to perceive us as a business providing. And at the same time, it needs to be me in the picture that is projecting the right kind of personality. And those things kind of fight a little bit in my mind, because I don't mind being in front of the camera. It's not necessarily the natural place for me. I'm quite happy doing it. I'm not sure that I always make sense when I'm behind the camera, but that's why we have a very good editing team. But it's balancing what I want to project as an individual, what the business needs me to project, and trying to find a comfortable space in the middle that does both. I've also got another story here about kind of signalling, because I suppose that's what personal brand is. It's all about signalling where you are in society, you're in the hierarchy, and Successfulville, all of those things. How well are you doing as an individual? Now, I have a strange thing. I've got a nice car, but I don't look after it. I've curbed every wheel. It's got a chip on the windscreen, but it's a nice car, and I should do more with it. I paid an awful lot of money for it. But this comes down to sort of like a friction between me as an individual who doesn't necessarily put as much emphasis on needing to own and have things of value to project who I am as an individual. At the same time, as a business, if I need to sort of project professionalism, success, really, so people kind of see that in me when I turn up at a meeting. If I turned up in a clapped out old car, they would say that person isn't very good at marketing because they can't afford a decent car. Now, I hate that kind of friction, because cars might not be important to me. I might spend all my money on something else. But I still have to fit in that category of showing people that we're successful and I'm professional and the business can afford, X, Y, and Z. And I find that quite an interesting balancing out, really. So I suppose in the long and the short of the story is I have a nice car, but I don't look after it, which I suppose does both of those things. Okay, so what does Jeff Bezos say about personal branding? He's widely quoted as saying, personal branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Goodbye.